Eli Mercer had lived most of his life in the quiet space between sunrise and sunset, where the land spoke louder than people ever did. His ranch sat alone at the edge of the valley, a wide stretch of grass and dust framed by distant hills. He liked it that way. Out here, nothing demanded conversation. The cattle didn't judge his silences, and the horses never laughed when his words came out wrong. At 32, Eli was known as reliable, hardworking, and painfully shy. Folks in town said he was a good man, just not the kind who knew how to be seen. That afternoon, the heat lay heavy over the land, the air shimmering like water. Eli leaned against a fence post, watching his herd move slowly toward shade, when something unfamiliar stirred the horizon. A lone rider cut through the dust, steady and unhurried. Eli straightened, his heart picking up pace. Strangers rarely passed this way, and when they did, they rarely came alone. As the rider drew closer, Eli saw it was a woman. She sat her horse with natural authority, her back straight, her movements confident. Her dark hair was braided neatly, swaying against her shoulders, and her eyes scanned the land as if she were memorizing it. There was no hesitation in her, no fear of the open space or the man standing awkwardly by the fence. She stopped a few yards from him. "My horse needs water," she said. Her voice was calm, neither demanding nor apologetic. Eli nodded quickly, suddenly aware of his dirt-streaked hands and sunburned neck. He didn't ask her name or where she came from. He only gestured toward the trough and led the way, his boots crunching softly against the dry earth. As her horse drank, she watched Eli with quiet curiosity. "You live alone," she said, not as a question. "Yes," he answered, surprised by how easily she had read him. She studied the ranch, the open land, the simple cabin in the distance. "You listen more than you speak." Eli didn't know how to respond, so he didn't. Silence, after all, was something he understood. After a moment, she said, "My name is Naya. I am Apache." The words carried weight, stories he'd heard growing up, warnings whispered in town. But standing in front of him, Naya was neither threat nor legend. She was simply a woman who looked tired and strong at the same time. "You can stay until sundown," Eli said quietly. Naya met his eyes, a faint smile touching her lips, as if she sensed something he did not, that this meeting was no accident, and that his carefully ordered life had already begun to shift. Naya did not leave at sundown, and when night settled over the ranch, Eli found himself listening to the unfamiliar sounds of another presence nearby. She chose to sleep beneath the open sky, wrapping herself in a blanket near the dying embers of a small fire. Eli retreated to his cabin, yet sleep refused to come. Every creak of the wood and sigh of the wind reminded him that someone else now shared his land, someone who did not belong to his carefully guarded routine. Morning light revealed her already awake, brushing her horse and moving with practiced ease. She worked as if she had always been there, repairing a loose strap on the saddle, calming a restless mare with a soft murmur in her own language. Eli watched from a distance, unsure whether to offer help or stay out of her way. When he finally approached, she handed him a tool without looking, as though she had known he would come. They worked side by side in near silence. The quiet did not feel heavy. Instead, it felt balanced, as if words would only disturb it. When Naya did speak, she asked simple questions about the land, the cattle, the seasons. Eli answered carefully, sometimes stopping to find the right phrasing, expecting impatience. It never came. She waited, eyes attentive, allowing him to finish at his own pace. By afternoon, the sun burned high, and they rested near the shade of a cottonwood. Naya studied him openly now. "You stay away from people," she said. Eli shifted uncomfortably. "I don't have much reason to go into town." "That is not what I said," she replied gently. He stared at the ground, tracing lines in the dirt with a stick. "People talk fast. They expect answers I don't have." Naya nodded, as if this confirmed something she had already suspected. "Silence is not weakness," she said, "but hiding inside it can be." Her words unsettled him. No one had ever spoken to him like that, without mockery, without pity. As the day wore on, she told him pieces of her story. She had traveled far, she said, leaving behind choices made for her by others. Freedom had a cost, and she was paying it mile by mile. Toward evening, the sound of approaching hooves shattered the calm. 3 men rode into the valley, their expressions hard and searching. Eli's stomach tightened. He felt the old instinct to step back, to stay quiet. But Naya rose to her feet, shoulders squared, her gaze unflinching. "She is coming with us," one man called. Eli swallowed, heart pounding, and moved forward before fear could stop him. "She's here by my say," he said, his voice trembling but clear. For the first time in his life, Eli did not retreat into silence, and the choice changed everything. The men rode away before the sun had fully set, their threat lingering in the dust they left behind. The valley felt different afterward, as if the land itself had taken a sharp breath and was waiting to see what would happen next. Eli stood in the yard long after they were gone, his hands still trembling from the courage he hadn't known he possessed. Naya watched him closely, her expression thoughtful rather than relieved. That night, she spoke more openly than before. They sat near the fire, the flames casting long shadows across the ground. She told him the truth she had kept guarded. She was expected to return to her people and accept a union arranged for political peace, a life decided without her voice. She had ridden away instead, choosing uncertainty over obedience. The men were not enemies, she explained, but they would not stop trying to bring her back. Eli listened, his chest tightening with each word. "You shouldn't stay," she said quietly. "They will return. Your land will suffer because of me." He stared into the fire, then lifted his head. "I've spent my whole life avoiding trouble," he said. "It didn't make me safe. It just made me alone." The words felt heavy and honest, pulled from somewhere deep inside him. Naya studied his face, seeing not the shy rancher others saw, but a man standing at the edge of his own change. They worked through the night, planning what came next. Eli suggested moving the cattle closer to neighbors, men he rarely spoke to but knew well enough to trust. The idea of asking for help made his stomach twist, yet the thought of doing nothing felt worse. Naya helped him prepare supplies, her movements steady, her confidence lending him strength. In the days that followed, Eli rode into town for the first time in months. He spoke haltingly at first, then with growing certainty. He asked for help, for watchful eyes, for understanding. To his surprise, he was met not with ridicule, but with respect. The quiet man had found his voice. When the men returned, they found a valley no longer isolated. Neighbors stood nearby, not hostile but firm. Words were exchanged, boundaries drawn. No guns were raised. The message was clear. Naya was not alone, and neither was the rancher who stood beside her. Afterward, as dusk settled over the land, Naya turned to Eli. "You did not have to choose this," she said. "I know," he replied. "But I did." She stayed, not as someone seeking shelter, but as someone choosing a future. And in the wide, open quiet that once defined his life, Eli discovered that silence no longer meant solitude, and that change, when finally faced, could lead not to loss, but to belonging.